Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Dennis. I serve as Executive Director for the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology. Welcome to all of you as we come together for our last resident talk of 2021, featuring 5 practitioners, all working at residence on our Oregon coastal campus this fall meets winter. We acknowledge and thank the first peoples and stewards of this place, who today are actively represented by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. We want to thank the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation and Jordan Schnitzer for their extraordinary sponsorship of Sitka. And thank you to all of our generous sponsors. There are so many. So as I read these names, just kind of feel the love that goes into making a nonprofit happen in this day and age. So special thanks to our founders, to our funders, including Schwabe, Williamson, and Wyatt, McMinimans, Scott Ceramics, Framing Resource, Brian Potter Design, Park Lane Suites, Lake Oswego Festival of the Arts, Palettes Northwest, Explore Lincoln City, Stiltzone Wines, McLean's Printmaking Supplies, the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation, the Robert and Mercedes Eichholz Foundation, the Kinsman Foundation, Oregon Community Foundation, Oregon Arts Commission, and Oregon Cultural Trust. There are a lot of in-kind donators in that, everything from legal services to wine we serve at events to pallets that built the walls at our art invitational. So just really appreciate the philanthropic and business community coming together. Thank you to Jane and Frank Boyden, Sitka's co-founders. Thank you, Alan, Peg, Jennifer, Ryan, Ruth, Dan, and Gail, Sitka's current board members. And this is end of year annual giving season. So special thanks to everyone who has contributed to Sitka in the past year and everyone planning to include Sitka in your annual giving as we bring in 2022. Speaking of the new year, our first resident talk of 2022 will take place on January 20th at 4 p.m. So kind of the same place and time, Pacific Standard. So please mark your calendars and join us on January 20th. We'll welcome a new cohort to the Sitka campus. If you have questions or insights for tonight's presenters, please share them using the chat or the Q&A feature on your Zoom menu. If I can, I'll weave as many questions as I can into our time together. We want to save as much time for our residents' presentations, but I can also have people respond to questions in writing, either through the chat or the Q&A too. So if you've got something to share, please do reach out. And now it is my joy to introduce our first presenter. Rebecca Dobkins is Professor and Chair of Anthropology and American Ethnic Studies at Willamette University in Salem, Oregon, where she has taught since 1996. She also serves as Curator of Indigenous Art at the Hallie Ford Museum of Art at Willamette University, where she is responsible for the care and exhibition of the permanent collection of Native American art, as well as for temporary exhibitions of contemporary Indigenous art. In her curatorial capacity, she has authored 5 exhibition-related books and is known for her work with artists who work in customary media, such as weavers and regalia makers, as well as in contemporary fine arts media. She has worked closely with Crow's Shadow Institute of the Arts at the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation for over 20 years, and organizes a regular biennial of prints produced during Crow Shadow's artist residencies. She currently has 2 major works in progress, a book written in collaboration with members of the 9 tribes of Oregon, The Art of Ceremony, Voices from Indigenous Oregon, to be published by University of Washington Press in 2022. It focuses upon the intersection of ceremonial arts, practice, and the natural world, and an essay in a forthcoming book about printmaking at the Institute for American Indian Arts. Please, wherever you are, we can hear you. So make some noise and welcome Rebecca Dobkins to the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology.
Thank you, Allison. And thank you everyone at Sitka and my fellow residents, really for this gift of time, space, place, and people. And what I would like to do today in the time allotted me is I would like to first start by talking about this place where we are, and then tell you about a couple of those projects that Allison so nicely described, and then tell you what I'm focusing on while I'm here at Sitka. And I'm going to try to do all this in 10 minutes. So I decided I wanted to start with a map, and please forgive me for not being able to be a professor. But I wanted to start with this representation of the original languages of Oregon. And we're up here near the Salmon River in an area of the coast that had a number of Salish speaking languages, but you can see the diversity, linguistic diversity of Oregon. So that is where we are. And then I wanted to show you also this map of Oregon, terrain map of Oregon, and explain that this gray shaded area, the entire western part of from the Cascades west, was the ancestral territory of many dozens and dozens of ancestral of bands and groups of Oregon that are still with us today, and that this long rust area was the 1,000,000-acre coastal reservation that was created as a reservation for these groups to be removed to. And then what has happened today is the two tribal communities that Allison mentioned that are the direct neighbors and whose communities represent the land that we're on, the Grand Ronde and Silettes, their homelands have been reduced to about 11,000 acres in the Silettes and about 15 in the Grand Ronde. So, or maybe vice versa, I can't remember, but from, all of Oregon to today, which makes it even more remarkable what kinds of things are going on in those communities. So what I wanted to talk with you today is about some of the connections that Allison mentioned that we've been involved with at the Hallie Ford Museum of Art in Salem, Oregon, where I've worked since 1998 when it opened, but joined Willamette in 1996. We have a permanent gallery of Native arts called Ancestral Dialogues. That work there at the front is by Rick Bartow, who has a beautiful print in the lobby of Sitka. And we work a great deal with both customary and contemporary art, people working in customary and contemporary media. One of those, the places that we work with closely is Crow's Shadow. This is a image of the studio at Crow's Shadow, which is housed in a former mission school. At Crow's Shadow, which is a residency like Sitka in some senses, different but similar, focuses mainly on printmaking, although also on customary arts, especially weaving and beadwork. This is a Native artist, Jim Denemy, who's making a print a few years ago. And the Hallie Ford has been a partner with Crow's Shadow. We are the repository for all of the prints, the lithographs made at Crow's Shadow at our museum. We hold biennial exhibitions, and a couple of years ago, we did a big 25th anniversary retrospective, published a book, and toured the exhibition. So being here at Sitka is really great because it's also a center for printmaking, and many of the artists who've been at Crow's Shadow have also been here. My own scholarship in printmaking, Native printmaking, has led me to, I've been working on something this week, I hope finishing the final copy editing details of a chapter for a book that's going to be called Experimental Expressions. And my work regarded printmaking at the Institute for American Indian Arts. This is a picture of a studio at American Indian Arts with my friend Lillian Pitt, who is an artist in residence there working with a group of students. And so I've just finished, literally just finished like yesterday, the copy editing for a chapter about printmaking at the Institute of American Indian Arts since 1980. Been working on that for about a year. And then this project, The Art of Ceremony, that Allison mentioned, I'm also working while I'm here on the final copy editing of this book, and that book will come out next year. And we're all really, really excited. All of us who were involved in this project are super excited to share that with the state of Oregon and beyond. I'll be sure that Sitka has a copy of it. But the main task that I'm doing while I'm here, the main, I shouldn't call it a task, sort of joy that I'm working on while here is the Hallie Ford Museum of Art has received a major collection of over 600 works of Northwest Coast art from George and Colleen Hoyt, who may be in the audience today. And this is George and Colleen at their home near Sandy, Oregon. They have been collecting for the last nearly 40 years, collecting Northwest Coast art. And I wanted to again show you maps. The map on the left is the larger Northwest Coast region, and by Northwest Coast, I'm talking about a cultural designation. The art that George and Colleen have collected is called Formline Art. It follows the conventions of Formline style and goes from the Tlingit peoples up in the Southeast Alaska, all the way down to Puget Sound to the Coast Salish. And so what George and Colleen have done is has collected a huge group of prints and carvings. And so what I'm working on while I'm here, this is the Hallie Ford Museum of Art assistant, Tasia Riley, working with me. She worked with me today. We are trying to get a handle on this incredible collection, and each of those pieces of papers and stacks represent different artists who are represented in this collection. There are over 120 artists. So we have a lot of work to do, but Sitka is the perfect place to do it, not just because I get to spread out in that beautiful studio, the Boyden studio, but because the ecosystems from which this art comes is very similar to Sitka. And also the combination of thinking about the role of printmaking at Sitka and carving at Sitka has just been really grounding for me while I'm here. So these last few slides, and I'm just give you a sense of the incredible breadth of the Hoyt collection. This is a work by Susan Point, Salish artist who's been responsible for lots of public art in the Vancouver area. This is an incredible mask by Walter Harris in the collection. Another one by Dempsey Bob, who's Tlingit and Tsimshian from northern British Columbia. And then this last image is a wolf mask by Art Thompson, who's Nuu-chah-nulth. So that gives you a sense of what I am working on while I'm here at Sitka. And I'm just so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Ryder Cooley is an interdisciplinary artist and musician based in New York, weaving together chimeric visions with songs, movement, and imagery. She creates cinematic performances and artwork. Ryder holds an MFA from Rensselaer Polytechnic, an MA from SUNY Albany, and a BFA from the Rhode Island School of Design. Ryder is the founder and lead singer of the dark carnival band Dust Bowl Fairies. She has performed and collaborated with musicians, including Pauline Oliveros, Tommy Stinton of The Replacements, and Melora Krager of Rasputina. Her music has recently been presented by NPR, WNYC, Bathsheba Dance Company in Israel, and the Uncoverage podcast series. Ryder is currently collaborating with Lisa M. Thomas of Thin Edge Films on a series of music-driven videos, which have won awards at festivals in Los Angeles, Germany, and New York. But today she is at Sitka making music. Please welcome Ryder Cooley.
Hello. I've been at Sitka for almost 6 weeks, actually. I'm leaving tomorrow for New York. But I've been so grateful to be here, and I've been making all kinds of things. And I just want to say thank you so much to everybody in the Sitka community, and especially the staff here. It's just been very inspiring time. So I started out making some just very whimsical collages. So I'm just flipping through a few of those images. This was really fun for me and kind of inspired by our elk friends, some of them, and the cougar who I didn't meet. Anyway, it was a great way of procrastinating from the project that I really wanted to work on here. It's called the Leech House series, and it is a bio art performance series working with bloodletting medicinal leeches, who are my pets. And it's collaboration with a whole group of photographers and videographers and artists. And so I've been putting all the materials together into a website. So the website is private right now because I'm trying to find a curator or publisher or find some places to present the project. So I'm going to paste the website link and the password in the chat box, but it's pretty easy to remember. It's just leechhouse.com, and then the password is leechhouse. It's kind of bloody, so it's not for everybody. This is one of my leeches. So anyway, I thought that the project is really about like parasitism and symbiotic exchange, exploring ideas of mutualistic parasites, what it is to be a parasite, how we can be, what are our options for really thinking about ourselves as parasites, and what can we do to make it as symbiotic as possible. So that's the sort of concept behind the project. But I thought, what might be a little bit more pleasant for people who are not interested in the leeches, because it's not for everybody, would be just to share a couple of music videos that I made while I was here with my accordion, Mirka. That's her outside in the courtyard. So the next video, if it works, it's I made it for the week of Thanksgiving because it's a well, the turkeys, because it's a hard time for the turkeys, and I've been working at an animal rescue. It's farm animals, and there's so many cute turkeys at the animal rescue. So this is the footage from the animal rescue set to a song by my band Dust Bowl Fairies. And let's see how it goes.
The lake, there lives a dream, an ancient dream beyond all telling. And when the dream comes up for air, alone, look round and build a stair. Be there, my love. Wherever you may be, let's dive into the dream of mystery. my love, when we come up for air. Hello, doth cry, and so will I. Balloon will
I edited it here, obviously the video footage is not from here and the song was recorded back in New York, but I had a great time editing it. And the animal sanctuary, once again, is called Andhoff Animals. And it's a rescue for farm animals, and they have almost 300 animals there. And it's pretty much just run by that one guy that you saw, Kurt. So he's my hero. And one fun thing about the song Loon Lake is it's going to be on the Dust Bowl Ferries vinyl project at the end of January, in case there's anybody out there who is into vinyl. It's at a vinyl studio in Brooklyn, and what happens is you can pick a song off of a list of songs, and then we record that song for you, and it's directly recorded onto the record as a single. So it's like a unique performance. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ryder. There's some lovely comments coming in. Love the imagery you captured of the animals. Nice work, Ryder, from Mason Langston, who was just here in residence. Thank you, Mason. And Chinchin, who was also just here, sending some lovely thoughts about your work. So thanks everyone for chiming in the chat, and thanks, Ryder, for sharing your work.
Thank you.
Jacques Rancourt is the author of 2 full-length poetry collections, Brocken Spectre and Novena, as well as a chapbook, In the Time of Prep. His poems have appeared in the Boston Review, Georgia Review, Kenyon Review, Missouri Review, New England Review, Plowshares, Southern Review, and Virginia Quarterly Review, among others. And his work has been featured on Poetry Daily, Verse Daily, From the Fish House, San Francisco Chronicle, Best of the Net, and the Best New Poets Anthology. He has held poetry fellowships, residencies, and scholarships from the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing, Cité Internationale d'Art in Paris, Bread Loaf Writers Conference, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and Stanford University, where he was also a Wallace Stegner Fellow. Born and raised in rural Maine, he lives now in San Francisco, but right now he is with us in residence at the Sitka Center. So please welcome Jacques Rancourt to Sitka.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. I got here just a couple of days ago and woke up to a herd of elk on my lawn, so that's always such a treat. And thank you to Allison and Tamara and everyone at Sitka for making this such a invited and creative space. So I had my second book, Brocken Spectre, came out a couple months ago, and so I'm still sort of in discovery mode for my next collection, which I'm working in earnest here at Sitka. And so I thought I would read 2 poems from the book that just came out that sort of point towards what's coming next, and 3 poems that are new, that are from this new project that I'm developing here. So Brocken Spectre is a book set in San Francisco that looks at the past, looks at the scourge of the AIDS crisis on the city, and thinks about belatedness of coming after a disaster and what it means to be a part of something, but very much apart from it. And so I'm going to read two poems from that. And I think maybe I'll try share my screen so you can read along for those of you who are less auditory minded. So let me see if I can do that. So this first poem is called Love in a Time of Prep. And PrEP is a daily pill that one can take to reduce the chances of contracting HIV. Love in a Time of Prep. To see more clearly, we climb the shifting sands of Haleakala volcano. The guidebook says we might be haunted if the mist and the light are just right. And sure enough, a rainbow halos my head's shadow. Brocken Spectre, it's called. And isn't this awesome, you, my dorky husband, say. You are thinking about science again, about how light and water particles bounce and interact and refract against each other. Whereas I, the melodramatic poet, see some paranormal visitor, some queer saint. Back home in bed, you tell me how in the early 90s to you, coming out meant you either killed yourself or you died from AIDS, and you chose to come out anyway. Time moves like bluffs, like erosion. It flattens to rift and split. It carves down the precipice like the runoff we clambered up to find the path already deteriorated. I hiked in just flip-flops, and when a thorn broke, I hiked in bare feet. Let's go back someday. Let's go back to where the ocean's panorama was endless and shimmering, where the violets bursting forth were reminders that the world will go on generously without us. In bed, I kiss you between your shoulder blades and say, I'm glad you're here. North of us, two freshmen are skipping class. They are learning. They are taking turns, taking each other raw, as if they alone are discovering something new. As if none of this ever happened. So one of the themes I'm exploring in this new book, which is about desire and disaster and the life cycle of desire, is all taking place in kind of the throes of the beginnings of climate change that we're experiencing now. And this last one I'm going to read from Mount Diablo is one that sort of pointed me towards that, and it considers the fires that have been scourging California, where I live now. And when I first moved to California, the mountain that kind of overlooks the bay, Mount Diablo, had recently been scorched. And so this poem sort of thinks about all, love and disaster and climate change all at once. It's called Mount Diablo. California is burning, and already the woods where I first learned to love you have withered, grayed. Last year, when fires rimmed the perimeter of our city, we followed in their wake, hiking the underside of Mount Diablo, and what was left by then already blackened to polish, to mythic ash. At dusk, our phones couldn't register our city's distant lights, so in the picture, we stand smiling before a black backdrop. A year ago, I barely knew you. And now I picture all the ways I could lose you. What virions might already be multiplying in your cells. What truck running an intersection might barrel over yours. What I might say that only had one sentence to say it. Metaphor will be the first to go. To walk through the moon sea I told you on that hike might look like this. This burnt mountainside, this Pompeian aftermath lacquered to veneer. How here we, like two astronauts, bob. How here we, like two Satans, patrol the outer ring of hell's topography. How I will love you through prize and peril. Some Scheherazade I've become, some Persephone, telling you lies, yarn after yarn, to keep you alive. Okay, on to the new poems. And so, like I said, I'm still in the exploratory discovery stage of this. So it's still a little unclear to me how to articulate these new poems. Only up until recently, I've only referred to them as the pile. And now the pile is starting to make some sort of shape and come forward as some sort of theme. And so, like I said, climate change, natural disasters, these sort of permeate the poems, as well as thinking about the life cycle of desire. So the first poem, The Bats, makes reference to the white-nosed fungus that has been just decimating the community, the bat community. I don't know if we call it the bat community, but the species of bats, and so many, and the numbers of bats have declined so quickly in the United States and elsewhere. So, and this also makes reference to a Buddhist temple I had the privilege of visiting in Thailand as well, which is where the poem opens. The Bats. Stepping around piles of guano in a temple within a mountain, pointing our headlamps at a large golden Buddha at one end of the cave. We were there to see the bats, hooded like monks, cloistered in the thousands, tucked within the ruffles of limestone. My steadfast belief that anything broken can be repaired has long since dissolved, now all but wiped out. When did I stop seeing them skitter across the blue gold sky at dusk, chittering in order to see, seeing in order to eat what rises into sound? I swing a softball bat sometimes to confuse their path, and once I knocked one right out of the sky. Home run, I cried out to no one. More moth than rat, the chalices of its ears, its open maw. I looked upon it, the only mammal to achieve flight. If there is such a thing as ascension, this is how it would happen. Blind, rising only at night, a temple inside a mountain, a Buddha blazing at the back of an open mouth, hidden, interior, and shouldered with shit. The bats returned for years afterwards, the world bound by certain rules. And I knew, as long as they always came back, I'd been forgiven. The next poem actually makes reference to my first artist residency I went on, which was in Paris, which was an amazing experience. But when I touched down and spent my first few hours wandering the city with my bags, was the exact few hours after the Charlie Hebdo shooting, and to which I had no idea about. And one of the first things I did was I stopped in Notre Dame and walked around where there was absolutely no one there, which is unheard of. And I remember thinking how lucky I was, not knowing what a tragedy was unveiling around me. So this poem references that. It's called The Cathedral, and the timestamp, the date is the day of the Charlie Hebdo shooting. This humid musk, this light-stained lavender by the red and blue shards of glass fixed together into a rose's fluorescence. This nave shaped like a cross, where I alone stand in its crosshairs, at the center of the empty cathedral, struck dumb and open-mouthed. Empty but for a statued archway of saints, standing clustered, peering down. Empty but for the sarcophagi, the apse where the carcasses of clergy lay dissolving under a marble floor. It takes only being murdered to become a martyr, a youth minister once joked. The Virgin etched into reliefs in the doorway I stepped through, a crown lowering onto her head, because no one's as relatable as a mother holding in her lap a dead son. The ceilings rib the vault, chambering each sound I make, then hushing it to nothing. The forest of thousand-year-old trees supporting a roof of gunmetal lead arched above like the diaphragm of a whale. And I, Jonas, ever the disbeliever, brought by awe into belief. The guidebook warned that there'd be lines, that I should plan on waiting up to an hour. So what luck, I think, arrive into this vacancy with my roller bags and dead phone, the siren's arc swelling up and down the city avenues built for horses as I step inside that medieval dark. And this is the last one I'll read. Thanks so much for listening, for tuning in. The Gorge. The gorge cut into the mountain beaten down, pummeled smooth by water and time. Think of all that never took place between here and there. The river of air no canoe has cut through. The salmon that never thrashed upstream to breed. Now 1,000-foot drop into absence. Roots that thread through sawtooth slate on either side to grip the cliff's precipice precariously like something ancient, like how I tried to clutch onto everyone I love in my mind to keep them here with me. I'd rather be more like those red squirrels, so grumpy and so horny, darting down the path flattened between trees, screaming their discontent at us from within the hollow of dead oaks, whittled down to my base desires enough to forget that even pleasure comes with its own small death, then forget what comes next. If not those squirrels, then an osprey perhaps, tucking its wings and to nose bomb the river to pluck out a cold-blooded fish. The will to carry on, the violence this causes. Lord, make me so sure and exacting. I want to be driven to despair just far enough to trust in everything. The cold bite of a wind's turn, the wing snap so sharp it breaks my sudden plummet.
Jacques, thank you so much. All of these resident talks have been so not just heartening, but I get revitalized, I guess, each time we host one, just being connected to different people's practices. And it just kind of feels like in defiance of everything that's keeping people so separated and apart. And there's just been something especially goosebumpy for me when we've had authors reading their own work in their own voice in real time. I don't know, I've just started paying attention to what is it about that feels like it's been so lost and is so restored just in these little moments when we have an author reading in their own voice in real time. I'm babbling, but I've got the goosebumps. There are some great comments in the chat too. Chin Chin shares your words with imagination and moving art in our moving imagination and art in our minds. Just scrolling back up. Your words are beautiful, Jacques. Connie shares. Tracy loves the phrase hell's topography. Tracy also loves the imagery of bats hooded like monks and the Jonas imagery and your grumpy squirrels and some other great comments in the chat. Got one more presenter for you this afternoon meets evening. Sarah E. Jenkins is a queer multidisciplinary artist from Northern Appalachia, living and working in Boston, Massachusetts. They work primarily in stop motion animation, drawing, and social practice. Sarah's work is inspired by post-industrial stories and places, coal and natural resource extraction, and experimental animation processes. Jenkins teaches experimental animation as graduate faculty for Massachusetts College of Art and Design and is the animation teaching assistant at Harvard University. Their work has been exhibited in the Northeast and internationally, including the Museum of Fine Art Boston, ICA Boston, and Girl House Cinema in Berlin and Boston. Jenkins was awarded a MacDowell Fellowship for the summer of 2021. And right now, Sarah is an artist in residence at the Sitka Center for Art and Ecology and our impromptu volunteer Zoom tech support. Please join me in welcoming Sarah Jenkins to the Sitka Center.
Hey everyone, thanks. Yeah, it's been super inspiring to see everyone's work and hear people's words. Thanks so much for having me. I'm completely thrilled to be here. I just got here on the evening of the 10th, so a little fresh, but starting to settle in. So let me, go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully my tech works okay because I will be sharing video. So hi, I'm Sarah. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. And like you just heard, yeah, I'm an artist and I'm a professor. I work primarily in stop motion, but I really started out with drawing and social practice, and I still do both of those. And yeah, I explore natural resource extraction, coal mining, unseen labor, and disappearing acts via experimental animation. So this picture of me, I'm in residence at MassMoCA, Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art, working on one of my current projects called Disappearing Acts, where I'm using some stop motion and animating screws and logs and ink. We won't see that today, but it is on my website, which I'll share later on. So this is just a little map here. Love the map. This is the little red pointer is Blandburg, Pennsylvania, which is the very small town where I'm from in northern Appalachia. It is in central Pennsylvania in the Allegheny Mountains. And being from that place really inspires a lot of my work. There's a long history of coal mining in my family, and other types of sort of industrial work, factory work, textile work, etc. And that's been a big inspiration for me too. So I'm going to be kind of talking about this as quickly as I can, trying to keep it in 10 minutes. I did practice this, so we'll see. But jumping way ahead to 2017, I was in grad school at School of the Museum of Fine Arts at Tufts University. I was in my last year of grad school, and I applied for a travel grant to go to South Wales. I was kind of making connections between South Wales coal mining in northern Appalachia. So I traveled to Blaenavon and Aberfan in South Wales. While I was there, my main sort of goal was to record oral histories, which I did. So I recorded oral histories with ex-coal miners in the town of Blaenavon, and then some other folks as well. Most of the ex-coal miners actually worked at Big Pit National Coal Museum. So all of the folks who work at the museum, sort of on the grounds running the museum, which is a sort of restored coal mine, are ex-coal miners. So they basically found work there because almost all of the mines have shut down. I also explored old mine workings, the post-industrial landscape, and I visited the Aberfan Memorial Garden of the Aberfan disaster from 1966, which most of you probably know about, probably have heard of. It was a really horrific event where a coal tip, which is basically a mountain of coal mining refuse, was placed above a school, and after days of rain, the coal tip collapsed and covered the school and killed over 100 children and 26 teachers. And I went there to pay my respects and to just learn more about the community. So this photograph is an image from one of the towns kind of between Aberfan and Blaenavon. So as you can see, there's all of this sort of, I think, quite beautiful, though it's really toxic, black sparkly stuff, which is coal. This is all coal slag, so the same stuff that would have been dumped above the school. And you can find these coal slag heaps all around where I grew up. So I actually grew up playing on these, like sliding down them, not knowing, of course, that they were quite toxic. But you can see this entire landscape is basically built up of coal slag from the mining industry in Wales. So this kind of moves forward into my thesis work, right? So part of my trip there was for research, or almost all of the reason for going was research. And I went ahead moving forward with my thesis, which was a 6-video installation that had 5 stop motion pieces and 1 video work called Patchwork. Also not going to show this today, but it is on my website, which I'll share later on. It's just a little too long for today. But you'll see some references to quilting, to drawing, to coal mining. So I use kind of everyday materials for the most part, but the black glittery stuff that you see is actually coal slag, again, the same material that we saw in the landscape earlier. And so with this project, I was making these kind of animated systems that did work in some way. They did some type of labor. They were quite bizarre what they were doing. And the mechanisms didn't quite function, but the idea was to kind of make them believable in some way. And also to think about this idea of unseen labor. So these works were animated at 24 frames per second, which of course, if you're not very familiar, that's 24 photographs per second of animation, right? So thousands and thousands of photos, thousands and thousands of times touching the little mechanisms which were about yay big. So there's quite an amount of like intimacy there where I'm touching the objects thousands of times as I'm working with them. This is a reference to a coal tip or a slag heap, depending on what you want to call it. It is again coal slag. And this is the one piece of video from the work. And this is a behind the scenes, right? So this is just a desk and some clamps and cardboard. My sets are often quite sort of just found materials, objects that I have on hand. And so then zooming ahead a little more, so after that research trip to Wales, I was really thinking that I wanted more time there. I felt that I wanted to go back, explore more of the landscape, explore more of my part of my family heritage as well. And so I did. I applied to a residency called Studio Mailer, which is in Chorus, Wales. Not having any idea what I was going to do when I arrived. So I did arrive and I realized that this place was basically entirely built of slate. So this image is my outdoor animation studio at the time. So what I did was I hiked around just exploring, trying to see what I would be doing there, right? I had very limited gear with me. And when I realized I was surrounded by slate, and this particular slate ruins, which was a hike up the mountain from the residency, I suddenly realized that I was surrounded by drawing materials, right? So I started doing some experiments, and if you look closely, you can see a little bit of drawings on the rock below my laptop. And this will all make more sense in a second here. So I'm going to go ahead and play most of this. This is called Slate Lines from 2018. And the reason I'm sharing this particular project is because it really inspired what I'm doing here at Sitka. So yeah, this film was shot in about 2.5 weeks outside. Again, it's slate on slate, it's not chalk, and it's all stop motion animation. And the birds and the sounds were also recorded on site. So this sort of leads in very much to what I'm doing here. So when I proposed my work to Sitka, I said that I wanted to do site responsive animation in the landscape, which is what I've been doing or attempting to do. So I've been exploring the landscape here, hiking up behind the campus quite a bit. And I have 2 pictures here on the left and right. And this, I like to show this because there's a 26-minute time difference between the 2, but it feels very dramatic. So something that I've noticed being here is that, is that the thing that's in the way? Something I've noticed while I'm here is that the light changes really dramatically, very quickly. So it's been a real challenge. Whereas in Wales, the light shifted, but it stayed fairly consistent. There was also a lot more daylight when I was there. I think it was in May, maybe. So anyways, being here in the winter with the light shifting and of course raining every single day has been challenging, but I'm here for the challenge. So yeah, so here's a picture of some stakes that I made out of driftwood. So I hiked down to the coast, down to the estuary, and found these beautiful pieces of driftwood and brought them back up. And Bob, who works here as staff, helped me figure out how to turn them into stakes. And so I made a short video, like for a minute, just showing you what I've been up to here. I think all of these I would call tests or experiments because they're not quite as refined as I'd want them to be, but it's been really interesting to try it out. So what you'll see is some short clips of just what I've done over the past few days. And then at the end, there's like a 45-second clip. That's a video showing you how I'm doing it and me trying to be cool. You'll see what I mean. So let me share that. And there's no sound on this, so yeah, just image sequences. Yeah, so that's what I've been up to while I'm here. I guess lastly, I'll just say this is my info if you want to reach out. This is something very important about me is that I'm obsessed with my cat Nessie. And like, look at her, why wouldn't I be, right? She's my hiker buddy. But you can find me here at my website, which is my name, sarahejenkins.com, Instagram @SarahMuseum, my email, and my Vimeo. And you can find everything just through my website. So yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for looking at my work.
Thank you, Sarah. There's a question in the chat. What is the advantage of stop motion over continuous motion, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, sure. So if I think about like slate lines, I could never do that with film, right? So I'm walking up, drawing like 2 millimeters of scratch, walking away and taking a photo, walking up, scratching another 2 millimeters, walking away, taking a photo. So I'm able to create illusions or magic. So I couldn't even do it with video if I wanted to, I mean. And so it's the same thing with the driftwood moving around the landscape, right? It's like, I couldn't do that with film. So it's this idea of playing tricks and again, I think of it as like animated magic or illusions, but they're all handmade illusions. Thanks for your question.
There are lots of lovely words flowing in the chat. This one especially struck me. Oh, I just lost it. Love, this is from Carol Ann. Love the thickened sense of time in your work. It sounded almost like a line Tracy would have complimented from one of Jacques' poems.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank Sarah and Rebecca and Ryder and Jacques for joining us at Sitka and joining all of us for to share this time and space and to share your work with us. So thank you everyone for participating. Thank you everyone out there for tuning in. Gosh, I just wish you all some wonderful next weeks, and I wish you health and creativity and community in as many ways as we can design it together in the new year. Our next artist and scientist and writer and musician talk in residence is coming up on January 20th. And with that, I'll just wish everyone a happy end to 2021 and a happy new year, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.